up time just to see you smile.
Assalamu alaikum. Some of you may have read my reversion to Islam story that featured on the New Muslim website. I wanted to really sort of talk a bit more about my experience as a revert under those circumstances and how I was able to leave that behind and live the life that I live now. As some of you are aware, my reversion to Islam took place in one of Her Majesty's establishments. The reasons why I ended up in custody are not really appropriate for this conversation. My past is between me and Allah. But what I will say is the choices I made were mine and mine alone, and no one else was to blame for those choices. Once I'd reverted to Islam, I spent a considerable number of years in a prison where I was able to learn about my faith to a degree and very basic things such as prayer and so on and so forth. And eventually I was released from custody, as in our cases most prisoners are, but found myself recalled back to custody for Islamic reasons. And these were terrible times for me. I was a new Muslim and I didn't know my place, I didn't know where I belonged. My family were supportive, especially my father, but they couldn't understand why I was recalled. They couldn't get their heads around it. I hadn't committed any criminal offences, I'd not committed any terrorism acts or anything like that, but I was still recalled back to custody for religious reasons. Allah blessed me. I realised that in the later years, but immediately after I was recalled back to prison, I was very angry. I became very extreme in the way I thought. This was a time when a lot of Muslims had come into prison under terrorism offences and so on and so forth. So it was a very confusing time for Muslims. And they all told me, these guys, they said, you know, the system will target you, you're a new Muslim, they don't like Muslims. So in my mind, having been recalled for this matter, I believed them. However, like I said, Allah did bless me in certain ways, because when I ended up going back to prison, I learned Arabic. I learned how to read and write Arabic. I now learned how to read my Quran in Arabic. I grew my beard. I understood why I was growing it. It wasn't just a symbol, there was a reason. The way that I viewed people, however, also changed. I got very much into the culture of everybody was a kuffar apart from us and all that kind of thing. And that took me down a path that could have ended quite badly. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continued to guide me throughout those difficult times. And the knowledge that I'd acquired reverting into Islam allowed me to take a step back from that and realise that the path I was going on wasn't the path of Islam. It wasn't what the Prophet ﷺ had taught us. It wasn't what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed to the Prophet for us. So I was able to come away from this and started to dedicate my time in there more towards my deen as it should be practiced, and also to help those who'd reverted to Islam within that environment stay away from extremism, from the risk of radicalisation. Not only from those who profess to follow our faith, but also from the system whose understanding of Islam seemed to come only from the media. So it was difficult times, and eventually, inshallah, I was released. My sentence was expired. Unfortunately, my father wasn't around to see me come full circle, because he passed away. He died of cancer while I was sent back to prison. One of the factors that led to my path, as I've previously spoken about, extremism. But when I came out, again, you know, I had a little bit of family around me, but the world was a very different place, a very strange place. For example, it took me 2 months to be able to eat with metal knives and forks, because I'd eaten with plastic for nearly 20 years. I would just walk across roads and nearly get myself knocked over, because where I come from, there were no cars. You didn't need to look. But there were also good things that I found. I was released and moved up into this area during the holy month of Ramadan, where I knew nobody. And the guys at my favourite takeout took me in. And that was when I had nobody. And they took me in and they fed me during the month of Ramadan. They gave me company. And that to me, you know, really sort of re-established my love for Islam, for the Muslim people, that they would do this for a complete stranger at that cost to themselves, just so that I had company and food. SubhanAllah, that was an amazing thing. From there, I established links in the community and started to, you know, build myself up. I knew I was never going to be a prisoner again. I knew I was never going to go back to that type of life and that type of attitude. But I needed to know where I wanted, you know, where I was going. I needed to sort of try and figure that one out. So what I did is I was going to the masjids and praying my salah, and through those connections I was given obviously the name of the Jews New Muslim Project and Brother Dawood. And I was told, you know, these guys are reverts, they know what you're going through, they understand you, give them a call. So I did, and we met up, and I think the Eid celebration with the New Muslims, and that's when I met, you know, a lot of people who I'm very close to now, and I met them through this New Muslim Project. So from one phone call, you know, I made dozens and dozens of new friends, you know, brothers, likewise, you know, reverts to Islam and born Muslims, but people who were, you know, true to their faith, who were practicing Islam as it should be practiced, and I was able to sort of, you know, talk to them about my circumstances, and they assisted me in all kinds of ways, from, you know, housing to part-time work and so on and so forth, so that I was able to start building a life for myself away from the walls and the wires of Her Majesty's prisons. Through the New Muslim Project, I was introduced to the Al-Huda Zawiya Centre here in Ravensthorpe, which is you know, where I do a lot of studying. I spend a lot of time here in the library, you know, doing my Islamic studies, but also attending the New Muslim hubs and stuff like that, where we can sit, and it's a safe environment. It's a good, positive environment for us, especially reverts to Islam, where we can sit down, we can talk about things that are affecting us, or things that are up and coming. For example, if there are programs available at the Zawiya for the weekend, you know, we can find out about them, pass it on, you know, attend. So through that one phone call, my life expanded quite dramatically. So coming home with no one, and here I am, sort of 2 years down the line, a free man, very much a free man, with a whole sort of social network around me of people who I, you know, I get along with, I go out for meals with, I attend gatherings with, I study with, and on top of all that, again from that one phone call, I ended up, you know, eventually getting married, which I did here at the centre, to a lovely lady, mashallah. So for me, you know, it has now come full circle. What I hope to do, inshallah, is continue the work that I do now with a project called the Prison Project. I set this up, initially I started it in prison, but I set it up outside here with the help of Brother Dawood, the New Muslim Project and so on, with a goal to try and assist those who reverted to Islam within the high security estate. For those of us outside are aware, Islam has become headline news for all the wrong reasons over the last decade or so. You know, the current affairs in Afghanistan, Iraq and so on and so forth have given people quite a negative view of what Islam is. But Islam is still one of the fastest growing religions on the planet. More and more people from Christian and Jewish faiths, etc., embrace Islam, they accept Islam. And prison's no different. Behind the walls, behind the wire, people still want, you know, solitude. They still want to believe, you know, and it's a good place for people to reflect on what they've done and to try and, you know, find that redemption. So Islam has taken over in prisons. It has become, you know, such a fast-growing faith within there that often not most of these brothers in there and sisters are neglected, and they're neglected by us, the Muslims, because we're not aware of what is going on. We're not aware of all these people who revert, and we don't know what we're doing with them, or we're too busy with our own lives to actually think about these guys. We're not saying we agree with what they did to go into prison, but what we are saying is they have accepted Islam. Now, when I was there, the only two choices these guys had was to abandon their Islam or to become radicalised. Now, they're not two great choices at all, because to be a Muslim in a prison nowadays is to invoke racism. you are more likely to be the victim of a racist assault as a Muslim in one of Her Majesty's prisons than any other faith. And that is fact. And that is because of the stigma attached to Islam in this day and age. So what the project aimed to do is to link up with these guys who revert to Islam, make sure that we can try and assist them in community events, or link them with the communities, or maybe act as a barrier for them and their families, because a lot of reverts when they accept Islam, they do get a lot of negativity from their own family. So it's being able to show them that actually this is not always the case, that they are reverts to Islam who, their families are very supportive, and we still get along with them. One of the things that myself and Brother Dawood have been doing now is we've started prison visits, where we visit the high security estate, we visit Muslim revert prisoners, and mashallah, this is going very well. In fact, we just last week did one at Wakefield prison, and a week on Friday we have another prison visit planned for another brother. So alhamdulillah, things are starting to sort of come through for us. What I would like to say to you is to consider this whilst you are going about your daily business, to think about those Muslims out there, particularly the reverts to Islam, who don't necessarily have people around them to guide them and to help them. And think about what could you possibly do to help them. Maybe a kind word, a letter, or something along them lines. Think about these guys. Allah has accepted them in His deen, and we should also accept them.
I'll give up time just to see you smile as we live life for such a short while.